Hi, this is Tony Sedgwick. Welcome to my vlog. Another maybe crazy thing to do, but why not? Under the banner of my website, thethoughtdisruptor.com, I'm going to tackle over the next vlog time a new series which I'm going to call the Leadership Series. And this is a culmination of a number of different things that I've either seen, read about, worked on, been inspired by, but it's all about leadership and how we can try and make people more effective, more interesting, and more authentic, which I think is the key to successful activities. So today I want to very briefly talk to you about something which was brought to my attention some years ago called the 6 Thinking Hats. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is a variation of the 6 Thinking Hats, but it's trying to understand with a sense of humour and a sense of maybe thinking about things a little bit differently, is how we view problems, and different people view problems in different ways, and different people tackle things in different ways. And this has an element of archetypes and stereotypes and phenotypes. That is, what you are, how you act, and how you behave in certain situations. And Edward de Bono is a guy who I've admired for many years, who introduced the concept of lateral thinking years ago, introduced this way of approaching problems called the 6 Thinking Hats. And he originally took 6 different colours of hats and used that as a methodology of approaching a problem. So a problem is put on the table, and then you attack the problem from a different perspective. And in my 6 Thinking Hats, I have a little bit of a twist on it, as you would expect from this series. And the twist is really trying to understand how someone would approach a problem. So if you imagine you've got a problem on the table that you either have an issue or you have a desire to build something, how would different people approach it? And if you take my style of 6 Thinking Hats, perhaps this is something that you can think about or you can use. And it's based on sort of different ways of stereotypically thinking. So if I just bring on my first hat, and you imagine you've got a problem in front of you, so how would you approach the problem? So if you go to your first hat, I mean, the first person is is pretty much a conservative person, it's somebody who's in the bowler hat. And how would they approach a problem? Well, they may look at the problem and they think, well, from my background, which is pretty conservative, I like to look the part, image is important to me, I don't really want to go out of the box. I'm going to look at the problem from a sort of a conservative approach, and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, well, I maybe need to think very deeply about risks. I may need to think about history. I may need to think about the dynamics of how the people in my sort of network are going to look at it. But by and large, I'm going to not be very flamboyant. I'm going to be pretty modest in my approach. And that really appeals to when an issue is there and you really can't get out of it, because nobody really wants to take an initiative. No one wants to take a different way. No one wants to come in transversely and cut through and disrupt the problem in a different way. And that's very much a thinking hat type of person. Whereas if we move on to another sort of thinking hat sort of person, we move along to a more the flamboyant sort of musician, or the flamboyant sort of person who likes to get out there. They're going to take a lot more risk. They're going to look at the problem and they're going to say, this is something that we can attack from different ways. And they're going to bring humour into it, they're going to make it more fun, they're going to try and lighten up the situation, they're going to get in there and they're going to cut through the traditional stuff and move into something very new. So somebody who's got a different sort of thinking hat, the man or the woman who's got the musicians or the crazy person's hat, is going to be very different. So then we sort of move on. Who else could we have in our thinking hats? Well, we've got the sort of renegade, the young sort of hip, the person who's got the whatever it calls back, the clip back or flat back or whatever it's called hat, and they're going to be the person who's going to look at it in another kind of way. They're going to say, well, maybe from a laid back point of view, they're going to say, this is what we need to do, but I don't know, man, we maybe need to think of it like this. And they're going to have another way of approaching the problem, which is the stereotype of the person who's more the sort of hip, the person who likes hip hop, who comes from Sedgwick Street, which is a great name, Sedgwick on Street, against Cedar, where hip hop came from. So this is another sort of person that could be really there. And then we sort of move on to even more flamboyant things, and we come up to the magician, the person who's the magic man, the person who's going to maybe look at things from a, can I move this around? Can I do a 6-card trick? Can I present things in a different way? How am I going to work this out? So somebody who's got a magic sort of style and trickery, different things, smoke and mirrors. I'm going to approach it in a different way. So they're another angle that's going to be put into it. And then you move on to another one. You move on to the more solid sort of person, but also somebody who's a firefighter. So somebody who's going to think of it, this is an emergency, I must attack this, I've got to do it, I've got to do it by tomorrow. And they're the sort of firefighter types who really want to make sure that they get their word said, but they actually they're attacking it from an energy and from an anxious position as they move forward. And then maybe finally, as we move into the last one of the different ones, we come back to the person who looks from a more spiritual side, somebody who can have a different approach because they think that actually we need to approach a problem from more of a humane or a humanistic point of view, more on a psychological approach. So what I'm really saying here is that the 6 thinking hats of Edward de Bono, as he put so clearly, where he used different archetypes of types of thinking to address a problem, can be thought through even more deeply, if you like, into archetypes of people, what people project, how they think, and how they would attack a problem. What this tells you more and more is when you're in a situation where there's a group of people, to align them is going to be more and more difficult than you think, because they're bringing more than just logic and intellect to a problem. They're also bringing that persona, that habitual pattern, that thought process. And it's the key to a leader, how he can merge and maneuver all those people to think as one voice and let them all be heard. Because each one of these people may have a different hat, but they're certainly worth listening to. So this is a Thought Disruptor, the beginning of a new vlog. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.